Hi, I'm Radiston from the Watermarkly team, and today I want to show you a few simple ways to resize your photos for Instagram so they still look great after posting. Instagram can be surprisingly strict about image size, aspect ratio, and composition. So sometimes a photo that looks perfect in your editor can end up looking soft, awkwardly cropped, or just slightly off once it goes live. The good news is, these problems are easy to avoid once you know what format to use and how to prepare your images properly. In this video, I'll show you what works best right now, the easiest ways to resize your photos for Instagram, and a few extra things to keep in mind if you want your posts to look clean and professional. Before we get into the actual resizing methods, let's quickly look at which image sizes work best on Instagram right now. If you use Instagram often, you've probably noticed that square posts are no longer the main visual standard. Instagram now clearly favors vertical images, mostly because they take up more screen space on mobile and feel more natural in the feed. That's why, for regular photo posts, one of the best formats to use right now is 3x4, or 1080 by 1440 pixels. This format works especially well because Instagram's profile grid previews are now taller, so images with a 3x4 aspect ratio are more likely to look clean and well balanced both in the feed and on your profile. It can be especially helpful for portrait photography, where that extra height gives you a bit more room to keep the full subject in the frame without cropping too aggressively. Of course, this isn't the only format you can use. A 4x5 vertical image at 1080 by 1350 pixels is still a great option. A square post should be 1080 by 1080, and for landscape images, the standard format is 1080 by 566. Instagram still supports all of these formats, but some of them may look a little less consistent in the profile grid preview, so that's worth keeping in mind if you want your grid to look polished. If you're creating a carousel, it's usually best to keep all slides in exactly the same dimensions and aspect ratio. That way, the whole sequence feels cleaner and more professional. For stories and reels, the standard format is still 9x16 or 1080 by 1920 pixels. And for your profile photo, the safest choice is still a square image, ideally 320 by 320 pixels or larger. Since Instagram displays profile pictures as circles, it's best to keep your face or logo centered. Now let's talk about the easiest and most practical way to resize photos for Instagram, cropping them in advance to match Instagram's preferred aspect ratio and image size. This is the method many photographers prefer because it gives them much more control over the final result. Instead of letting Instagram decide how your image should be cropped during upload, you choose the framing yourself and make sure the most important parts of the photo stay exactly where you want them. That can make a huge difference, especially when composition really matters. A proper crop can be a real game changer if you usually shoot in proportions that don't match Instagram's preferred formats. If you specialize in landscape photography and want your work to look strong and well presented on your profile, or if you shoot close-up portraits and don't want the head, hands, or legs to get cut off. Another advantage is that if your image is already prepared in the right aspect ratio and pixel dimensions before upload, Instagram has less processing to do. And in many cases, that means less aggressive compression and a better chance of preserving detail and clarity. Resizing images for Instagram with a crop tool can be very simple and straightforward. The whole process can be done online, so you don't need expensive or complicated photo editing software. Let's take a look at how this works using Watermarkly's image cropper. First, upload your photos. Then choose the appropriate Instagram preset. After that, adjust the crop area on each image so the main subject stays in focus. Click Next Step, select Crop Images, and save the processed files. Since the preset already includes the correct aspect ratio and pixel dimensions, you don't have to spend extra time adjusting export settings yourself. It's all built in, which makes the process much quicker and easier. Another helpful thing is that the app saves your resize settings automatically. So if you edit photos for Instagram on a regular basis, working with future batches becomes a lot faster and more convenient. Some photographers also like to experiment with image dimensions after choosing the right aspect ratio. The idea is that a photo exported at slightly larger pixel dimensions than Instagram strictly requires may appear a bit sharper when viewed more closely or zoomed in. This approach is also easy to test with a similar online cropping tool, although the workflow is a little different. To do that, upload your images, then select one of the fixed aspect ratios. Click Next Step and open Settings. Go to the Resize Images menu and enter your preferred exact width or exact height in pixels. Then click Crop Images and download your photos. This gives you a bit more flexibility and allows you to fine-tune the final result based on your own preferences and editing workflow. If you're not ready to crop your photo and lose part of the composition, there's another option. Instead of cutting anything out, you can resize the image by adding white borders around it. This changes the aspect ratio of the final image and helps it fit Instagram's preferred dimensions while keeping the original photo fully visible. This method can be especially useful when every detail of the composition matters and you want to preserve the image exactly as it was shot. Of course, this approach creates a very different visual effect. Some photographers like the clean look of white borders, while others prefer images that fill the entire frame. So in the end, it really comes down to personal preference and the style you want for your Instagram feed. Here's how to resize photos for Instagram using this method in Watermarkly's Image Resizer. Upload your photos. In the settings, choose exact width and height. After that, enter the required pixel dimensions. Enable the option Add white pixels around the image. Then click Resize Images and save the resized copies. This way you can make your photo fit Instagram's requirements while keeping the entire image intact. There's also another option you can try, expanding the background with AI. This method can work well if your photo has a simple or fairly uniform background like a studio portrait or an image with a lot of empty space around the subject. The idea is still the same. You want the whole photo to fit Instagram's preferred format. But instead of cropping the image or adding white borders, you extend the background by generating new pixels with AI. If the tool works well, the background can be expanded quite smoothly without obvious visual flaws. At the same time, this method still comes with some limitations. Free tools don't always produce reliable results. They often limit the final export resolution, and some of them require registration before you can even download the finished image. So while this can be a useful option, it's usually less predictable than traditional methods. If this approach feels right for your workflow, it may be worth looking at paid tools rather than relying on free ones only. Even if you resize your photo correctly and use the right aspect ratio and pixel dimensions, the final image can still end up looking softer or blurrier after upload. If that happens, the issue may not be the size of the image itself. There are a few other things that can also affect how your photos look on Instagram. One of them is the file format. In most cases, photos should be exported as JPEG using a high or maximum quality setting, usually somewhere around 80 to 95%. PNG can also work, but it's usually a better choice for graphics, designs, or images with a lot of text. If you mainly shoot on an iPhone and your images are saved in HEIC format, it's better to convert them to JPEG before uploading them to Instagram. This gives you more control over brightness, color, and sharpness before posting instead of leaving that conversion to Instagram. Another important factor is the color profile. To avoid unexpected color shifts, it's best to export your images in sRGB. This is the safest color space for web and social media, and it usually gives you more predictable results across different apps and devices. If you upload images in a wider color space, like Adobe RGB or Display P3, the colors may not appear the way you expected after publishing. Sharpening also matters. If an image is over-sharpened before upload, Instagram's compression can make that much more noticeable, especially around edges, skin texture, and fine details. So in most cases, moderate sharpening works better than trying to make the image look extra crisp in advance. And finally, the way you transfer your files can also affect quality. If you edit your photos on a desktop, it's best to move them to your phone using something like AirDrop, Google Drive, Dropbox. These methods help preserve the original image quality. By contrast, if you send images through messaging apps or email, they may get compressed before you even upload them to Instagram. So if you want your photos to stay as sharp and as clean as possible, it's worth paying attention not only to aspect ratio and image size, but also to file format, color profile, sharpening, and file transfer. And that wraps up our tips on how to resize photos for Instagram. Let us know in the comments which method works best for you and what tools you usually use. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.